When you speak another language, my God, you feel so loud all the time. You go years without making anyone laugh. No one has any idea that you're adventurous or optimistic or that you're kind.
I know what I sound like. I hear my voice too, but I am hearing myself.
One day, you will be far away from here. I wonder who I will speak with then.
How do you feel? How do you feel being in English on Broadway? And it's a hit now. It's officially a critic's hit on Broadway. Mm-hmm. What are the emotions?
Overwhelmed. Yeah, truly.
I feel really happy.
Happy.
It's an amazing feeling to be in a show you love that everybody else also loves.
Yes.
I know you've done this show elsewhere, but now you're on Broadway. The stakes are maybe a little bigger. What's it like hearing the audiences responding to it, and are you feeling sort of the back and forth with Broadway audiences?
I think for me, the first night, the first preview, when we did our first scene and I turned and we said something and people laughed, it was like suddenly 700 people are laughing at your joke. It felt overwhelming, but as you get into it, it's like you've gone from a small ship to a cruise line.
You're on a cruise ship, basically.
You're
on a Broadway cruise. I love in the script, it describes every character's accents, right? You have a thick accent, your character has a thick accent.
Disaster.
Your accent is barely there, and you have a sweet,
Light and sweet.
A sweet accent. And the play really explores, there's a beautiful device where when the characters are actually speaking Farsi to each other, we're hearing it in non-accented English. Right. And it's a great device, and it sort of like draws you in as an audience member right away. What is it like playing with all of that sort of accent as actors, working in New York City? What's it like with that?
Well, I think it's so wonderful because we give the audience access to this world, to this duality of living in these two worlds. And then I think Sanaz is such a master because at the very end of the play, Marjan and Elham actually speak Farsi. And for the first time, the audience is put in the position that the characters have lived in for the entirety of this TOEFL class, where they have to tolerate their discomfort of being an outsider for a moment. So I think this device of, speaking naturally when we're speaking Farsi and then speaking in accented English gives the audience a really great sense of what it's like to be an insider and be an outsider and to feel that tension and struggle in our language.
And people have asked that, like, how do you do it? Like, it's no different than learning a dialect or learning your lines or learning that at this particular time, that's where you end up, or you do this, or you put your back. So it's just, you realize that that is what is happening at that time, and it changes your physicality, your cadence, and obviously the accent. But when you get the formula, it's no different than anything else an actor has to do to go through a scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this thing that Sanaz did, which is this, implicating American audiences with American accents. And you're watching Iranians sound exactly like you sound when they're speaking their own language. So it kind of creates a distance, but also it closes the distance, depending on where the play is. And so it kind of has this, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, this like meta quality that is super, super cool. And that I think has an emotional effect, which is the most important, thing to have in a play, I guess. Yeah.
The play takes place in Iran. It's not a very political play. It's actually, is it a political play at all? I mean, there's definitely undertones. We're talking a lot about culture and assimilation, right? And you consider it definitely a political, it seems like it was written out of a real political need.
Well, I think if you look at what it's talking about, it's very political because it's talking about the lives of these human beings and how it's being affected by certain policies, either internal or external. And it's not blatantly political because nobody sits there and, dissects international politics. But as these characters talk about where they need to go, how they can get there, what they need to do to make that happen, you can't say that politics doesn't permeate every aspect of these people's lives.
But it's told in such a sort of everyday slice of life, right? I think that's really what gives it its
real
power.
Human impact that it has on each individual person.
Yeah, I think it's a very political play in the sense that it says a lot about a lot of things in the world, but maybe it can be perceived as non-political because it stays away from how we tend to want to receive stories about the Middle East in America, particularly. But this is a play about language, about power, about access. It's a play that's also about home and about borders and about who you are when you speak what you speak and what it means to take the language of the world for granted and what it means to what you lose, what you gain when you are learning the language that, you know, we take for granted in the States. And I think those are very political subjects. I just think that it is not, it has nothing to, the play is not about, you know,
It's not
the
preaching.
Iranian-American wars, you know, or the Iraq-Iran war, or about any of the cliches that you tend, you know, you always want to see Iranians. People tend to assume to see Iranians or Middle Easterns, you know, in that framework. It's so far from that and so much more elevated than that, which is why we're so proud to be in it.
I want to talk about, you have a great line. Obviously, Farsi is the native language of the characters in the play. You have a great line comparing English. You know, the characters are trying to learn English, and the stakes are very high for why they each have their own reasons for needing to learn English. But you have that great line comparing Farsi to English and how English is not poetry.
Yeah.
And you talk about rice. Can you talk about that? Can you sort of tell me about how you compare English to rice?
Well, I think for the poetry aspect, I think so much of what I love about Goli is in her attempt to be simple and to just using the words that she has, she accidentally falls into poetry because to be Persian is so intrinsically poetic. Our language is poetic. And I think when she talks about the rice, she's talking about this is something simple. It's like rice, and you can turn the rice into whatever you want. And in Persian food, we have many kinds of rice. We have baghali polo, albali polo. We have all these kinds of rices, and you can turn it into whatever you like.
Yeah.
And that's the power of English. I get to turn it into whatever I like. And I think that's the power of it. It's simple for her, and it gives her power and confidence in her own voice.
Yeah, but they're really struggling to learn, and you're watching them learn over the course of the play, and it's really about sort of, there's a lot of discussion about the comfort of living within your own culture and sort of the discomfort of having to assimilate, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's sort of that's a constant topic throughout. Is it fun to play with those topics?
I think we all have some variations of those experiences in our own lives. And it's not just that they're trying to assimilate, it's their relationship with this mandatory assimilation. That's the problem. Yes, people can learn languages and go and travel, and that's wonderful. But what these characters are talking about, that in order for them to move forward in their lives, whatever it is, they have to do this because that is the only bridge to that destination. And that's where the desperation comes from.
But I think sorry, can I interrupt you for a second? I think what Sanaz has done so beautifully, though, is that everybody has a different relationship to that. Like, you know, and it depends on each character's stakes and their need to learn English and pass this TOEFL class and this test. But like for Goli,
She loves it.
She loves it. She loves what English does. And even though it's a sort of macro injustice that she has to learn this new language, she relishes in it, and she has control for how she wants to relate with this obstacle. And she relishes in that. So I think it's also beautiful that, like, you know, amongst these macro problems, we also still have personal choice as to how we want to relate to these big world issues that we don't have full control over all the time.
Yes, and there's also discomfort sometimes in your native tongue. And there's fantasy and beauty in learning something, you know, that you don't speak, and you get to experience yourself differently. I mean, that's what also complicates the play in a really good way. You know, it's not like I just want to make sure that the play doesn't sound like, you know, an attack on having to learn English. It's the furthest thing from that. It's really I think we're digging into what it means to speak and communicate. Yeah.
Could you each that you're all making your Broadway debuts, the whole cast, Broadway debuts, I love that. And I love seeing diversity on Broadway, obviously. Can you each just quickly tell me, what does it mean for you to be making your Broadway debut in this play right now at this point in your career?
Oh my God, I can't even say it's a dream come true, but the best way to say it's a dream beyond dream come true.
Yeah, I think for me, it's, I moved to the States in my early 20s, and I think, you walk around Midtown and a lot of plays just don't relate to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's incredible to be able to be here in this particular play as who we are, that's super important, I guess.
This is the best play I've ever read. The best Knud is the best director I've ever had, alongside the most wonderful actors I've ever worked with. So to be able to do this play with this director, with this cast, and for it to be Broadway, I just feel like I am living the highest, this is the kind of art I want to be making, and it's at the highest degree. Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt that it's a hit.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, welcome to Broadway, 2 Broadway debuts. What is it like to be making a Broadway debut and also within a whole cast and a cast of friends? You've been together a while now. What's it like to all be making Broadway debuts?
I mean, I feel like you work on things and then casts get separated, and there's so many stories that you hear about that being the fate of things, and the fact that it's not just us, it's the designers and it's our director and it's it's a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are so many things that could have gone wrong along the way for that confluence of things to not come together, that it feels extra special. And we all just love the play so much and believe in what it's saying, and we really put our whole backs into it every night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was it like to first experience these characters and this story and to dig into it?
Funny you should ask that, because we were doing a line through right before we previewed, and our stage manager was like, I hated your character. She did so much rewriting in our first production at the Atlantic, and she's a genius and she's the best rewriter I've ever met, but she rewrote until they took the pen out of her hand 2 days before opening.
And she did some rewriting during our Broadway.
Yeah. She was like, I'm never done.
I know I want to Pulitzer Prize, but...
So she changed a lot. I know for my character, definitely, our stage manager, Axel, was like, you were such a bitch. I was like, I wasn't. But it changed a lot.
Yeah. But you don't always get, these characters have never been on a Broadway stage before.
No, when I first read Elham, I was pretty floored, both by some sense of recognition in who she is, and just feeling a connection. We talk about Chekhov a lot. We love Chekhov sort of collectively in the cast, and these roles that we aspire to play when you're in drama school. But to read something that has the depth that the play itself, I think, is a great American play, and each character is so complex. But to have that additional element of being from where we're from, and speaking to the experience of nomadism and being an immigrant, it continues to reach into my soul in a way that is extremely profound.
Mm-hmm. You referenced your character. She walks a very fine line.
So this is what's interesting. When I first started, all I had was questions. I'm like, well, why English and why this? And Sanaz kept saying, that's a really good question. And actually, I feel like I discovered who Marjan is through a series of mysterious questions. And I think the thing that's most sort of profound for me and with this play is that, yes, we're Iranian, and yes, we're, you don't get to normally see these people, but each individual character is representing themselves, and they're not the same. Right. And I feel like oftentimes, or a lot of times, we were otherized or put in a box, and it was like, well, you can represent the Middle East like this, and you can represent it like that. And I play a character who is mysterious and romantic, and she doesn't know why she's more alive in this versus that. And I feel like that representation, actually, I've never seen. And Sanaz said this thing too. She was like, I cared about putting, these are my stories, and I'm so inspired by Iranians, but I also have my voice. And so in this play, it's like she wrote it for us, who are kind of belong in 2 different places and have never found a place to really belong, and she gave that to us, to like do it in our voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like we've been relegated a lot of times to playing sort of either the sad Middle Eastern, tragic Middle Eastern trope. Like we've done plenty of that, or the sort of like angelic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or we were there to give you a history lesson.
Yes. So some sort
boring.
of expositional thing, and to encounter these characters. I mean, Elham is so divisive and really ugly, and in certain way. Like she is not here to be a pretty character.
Right.
I think she's a beautiful soul, but it's not. There's a grittiness to her. There's a drive that has nothing to do with sort of needing outside validation, which I find incredibly refreshing.
So you talk about both your characters. When they come together, the relationship between these characters is beautiful. I mean, it has such a beautiful journey, teacher and student. What is it like to play this tension, and talk a little bit about why these two women together are so fascinating?
Well, you know, I will say, I feel like the journey of our relationship is the thing that has changed more for me. I don't know if I'd say for you, you know, you can speak to that, but I feel like what Knud really encouraged this time, and he always believed that Marjan is actually a really good teacher. And sometimes like it's easy to play up the tension for the audience, but I feel like this time there was a stronger attempt to really take her in and be a good teacher. So we became a foil for each other in a much more sort of genuine way. And I feel like she is the one that ultimately gets at the question that she can't answer. And so I feel like it takes this long sort of journey of recognizing two people who were both at the top of their class, are really smart, and just take very different paths.
Yeah, they do feel like two sides of the same coin, and for most of the play, they are butting heads, and there's sort of like, at least for Elham, I think she's misinterpreting the mysteriousness that is Marjan's character, and interpreting it as some sort of rejection of being Iranian and of the Persian language, which she's already struggling with because she's having to learn English against her own will and leave the country that she loves against her will because of the economic, socioeconomic situation, political situation. And so it's Sanaz again has set up sort of they're the perfect foil for each other. Yeah. And what I think you're speaking to, this iteration of the play really brings us together at the end to grapple and to come together and sort of help each other understand both how we missed each other and how we weren't able to connect, and to also take in the larger situation that we're both in, and how impossible it is, and how unfair, how deeply unfair it is, and that we're actually allies in it.
Yeah. And I do feel, and I felt this really on stage last night, like that in a way I experience when we slip into Farsi and like the very last moments of the play, I think we actually hear each other the most in that moment, which is like, you know things, and then you experience it like physically, where like looking at her and being like, oh,
I'm gonna cry right now.
like I just felt last night, I was like, it breaks my heart that you have to leave because I see you. Yeah. And the fact that it happens in Farsi, it just was like, last night I was like, oh my God. Every night I feel like there's a new discovery of just how profound Sanaz is, and how Knud like let it sort of swim in this restraint and like holding back or kindness that kind of just, it's there for you if you play it.
And we didn't rehearse that scene very much to the point where Marjan and I were like, sorry, are we gonna
are we ever gonna
get in here? And actually I think
they knew.
And it was right. And there is something really mysterious that actually I think needed the time of doing the play in front of audiences to unfold, and is still continuing to unfold, that was unrehearsable.
Finally and quickly, you're basically referencing how not every job is just a job. I mean, there's another sort of emotion to doing this play. Just tell me quickly, what is it like to get to tell this story every night on Broadway, 8 times a week for a big Broadway house?
It's like winning the lottery.
Yeah. We have to remind ourselves to not play the ending of this experience every day because we know how special it is. Yeah.
Thank you for being here. I'm in love with your creation. English, big hit on Broadway, great reviews. How are you feeling right now? Are you sort of taking in, this is a project you've been working on for a while. How does it feel to be in the moment right now?
Opening night was like one of the best nights of my life. And that was before reviews or anything came out. We just have been at this play for a long, long time. And to see it like scale up so beautifully, to see this thing we've all been sitting with for years be celebrated was, I don't know, of course, I was so happy. And the day after I totally crashed. But yeah, it feels amazing. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, it's euphoric when the world sees things the way you see them, because so often it feels like you're out of access. But there's so much love like inside of this company already. I felt fortified against public response either way, because the cast is just, and the designers, there's so much affection for what we're doing that, yeah, there's like an internal strength that was actually like that was like the most moving part of opening, was actually that which our company had like not said to each other yet, which means more to me than like the clippings.
These are both your Broadway debuts, your entire company of Broadway debuts. These are not actors we've had on Broadway before. These are not characters I've seen on Broadway before. There's a lot of extra emotional weight to that. I mean, there's just doing the work, obviously, and doing the job of bringing the show up, but even some of your actors talk about there are certain moments when just things hit them with like extra emotional resonance. Do you feel that as well?
You know, I find it astounding that playwright, director, cast, all of us have made our Broadway debuts with a play that was delayed for 2 years, that started rehearsal at the height of another COVID surge, went on with no understudies, never canceled a show. We did cancel our first preview, but everyone was doing that, so that doesn't mean anything. But like, had a full run. Like doing this play the first time was for all of us like just a leap of faith, because we didn't know what we had. We all believed what we were doing was beautiful and worthy, but like we didn't know if people would. We thought I really thought I might be laughed out of town. Like I have no idea. So, yeah, it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember saying to Marjan, we were trying to guess if people would like it, and she thought we'd be celebrated. I was like, well, it'll either go that way or they'll treat us like a cancer.
Yes.
There's going to be no in between.
That's exactly what I thought. The night before, I mean, I've told the story a million times, but the night before our first preview, I went home, had a panic attack, and then freaked out so hard I DM'd Heidi Schreck at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning. I was like, Heidi, how are you? I think something horrible is about to happen. Like, do you have, what say you? And she so graciously DM'd me back at 7 a.m. and calmed me down. But like, we had no idea. We really believed what we were doing was beautiful, but yeah, we had no idea.
You have premiered a lot of plays, a lot of new plays in your career. When did you first encounter English? How did you two come together, and what was your first reaction to the project?
Oh gosh, it was January of 2020. So we started talking about this, and it had already been programmed for the Roundabout Underground. And so a lot of the plays that I work on, it's different case by case, but some of them are like I'm on from like germination. Like this one just like fell into my lap, and I felt so grateful. And we were just immediately started talking about that underground production, casting design dreams, you know, boots on the ground, making up for lost time. And then, you know, the industry was suspended.
Yeah.
That production never came to be. Roundabout was very gracious in allowing us to sort of shop around for a co-producer and getting that off-Broadway premiere. And I remember the play always struck me as so brilliant, and it went through such amazing and furious rewrites during that first production. I think after our first rehearsal, first reading, we cut 2.5 scenes, and it just never stopped. So our experience of that first round was like discovering what it was in front of an audience, which was so different. This time we had such confidence in the text, it became a totally different task to like trust that the words were done and now we could like play. Yeah.
As an audience member, it doesn't strike me as an extremely political play. Your actors absolutely corrected me and said, no, this is a very political play. And I understand that. As an audience member, though, it has a real soft touch. And I think that you are relating to these characters in a very human way. It's set in Iran, but it's maybe not the story audiences at the Roundabout walk in thinking they will see. But I know the play came out of a lot of frustration for you. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Talk about where the play came from and what drove the writing for you.
I wrote this play in response to the travel ban, the Muslim ban that was enacted by the first Trump administration in 2017, 2018. I wrote the play in response to the way I've always known that many Americans would perceive my parents who speak with an accent as less intelligent, less human, and how deeply absurd that is given that my parents are speaking a second language. So I just wanted to, I wrote it out of rage, I wrote it as a scream. I wrote it when I was nobody, and I just wrote it for myself and I wrote it as a grad school thesis. I had to turn something in, but I go back and forth. I really contradict myself in like whether I would call this play a political play. I often say I'm not a political writer, but yes, of course, like the decisions these characters grapple with are, do I leave or do I stay?
Right.
And that is an inherently political thing to be grappling with, a choice that is shaped by the politics around us. So I really don't know how to answer that. What's really been important for Knud and me, and why he is like my soulmate, is we are obsessed with truth and beauty, and that means, like, of course, that doesn't mean ignoring any politics outside our beautiful spinning box, but our questions always come back to like, what would someone actually be doing? What would this actually look like? And how do we make it beautiful and theatrical, but never make it theatery, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and you have a sort of core tenet of not feeling the need to educate your audience.
Yeah.
We all need to educate ourselves, and the theater can do something so much more soulful and artful than that when given the opportunity and the real estate to be blazingly itself. And I think that was one of the obstacles to imagining it on Broadway and supporting it on Broadway, is because it very much it's hard to define as one thing. It's hilarious, but it's not a comedy. It's heartfelt and soulful, but it's not a melodrama. And protecting its delicacy from the gravitational pull of what it means to like be on that stage and be like housed on 42nd Street was something we all took really seriously.
I love obviously it's about language, and it's about these Iranians Farsi is their native language. They're learning English to try to pass this test. And there's this beautiful device of when they're speaking to each other in Farsi, they're speaking in English without accents, right? It just engages the audience right away. It's just sort of a brilliant concept.
That's nice to hear because no shade at all. In tech at Atlantic, there was a wonderful, he's gonna watch this and feel horrible, but it's fine. I won't name him. This student from, I think, the acting school came in to make sure the actors were, just to be on book for the actors. And he turns to me and goes, "Oh, that is really cool what you're doing." I go, "Thank you." He goes, "Do you think people will get it?" And I was like, "Bro, you can't, in tech? You cannot ask me this in tech." Anyway, we did not know that people would even get that. So I just wanted to chime in and make that clear.
I just always took that for granted. Like,
Sure.
on first reading it, just the intelligence of that, but also I think I just underappreciated the freshness of that conceit. That people, it wasn't until we had an audience and everyone was like you just watch these like aha moments through the first scene of like individuals like dawning what's happening and being so delighted by that. And I was like, oh yeah, it's really fucking cool. That was always like given circumstances for me.
Yeah. Well, thank God they got it.
They got it.
We got it. What about finding your cast? It's a beautiful company of, like I said, fresh faces to me. What was it like bringing them together, sort of building the play with them, and then now watching them get to perform it every night on Broadway?
It was a bit of everything because some of them had developed the play and been a part of readings even before I was on the show. Some of them we were casting over Zoom. Like, it was so weird. It was the era of Zoom, but we were like looking at like video submissions, never having done that before for some other roles. And yeah, so in a hodgepodge way, we sort of locked into creating this like family, and now every single person feels so essential. And yet when you're sort of making decisions for a production you assume is going to be canceled because of Omicron, if, you know, just trusting your gut, tuning out the noise. Now in hindsight, being so thankful we made the decisions we made just by instinct. And you have like this amazing connection to the Persian theater community. It feels like you're building an extended repertory company between all your plays.
Yeah, they're amazing. You know, what's I think also really like bonded us was we like built a show together. I mean, we were with everything, like the tech and the design in the show is so elegant and really, it's deceptive. It's really complicated. Like Knud, I say was doing rewriting because like he was we go on and on about the lighting and our genius lighting designer Reza Behjat, which you should talk about at some point. And then we were rewriting the script, and then they were finding these characters, and then it just became this. There's this beautiful alchemy between us all. So like that play is all of ours, you know, and like no one knows it like we do, and I don't know, and then for all of us to like to close in 2022, and then like for me to be sitting with like, well, when we come back, if we ever came back, what would we want to change? Like we've just had all this time to like sit with the play that we had and the play that we loved and the play that we wanted to create had we had more time. Yeah.
You grew up in California, and you grew up, I believe, speaking English and Farsi. What does the Farsi language and Persian culture mean to you?
Persian culture, to me, is like boisterous and joyful and vibrant and totally divorced from any regime that is lording over Iran. And it's also like I am a part of a diaspora. So there is pain because we're talking about people who left oftentimes unceremoniously. And so the language is, when I speak Farsi, interesting. It's the language I feel like I should be speaking. It's a language that is natural for me, and like my experience speaking English in the world is often that I open my mouth and people are, you sound like me, like you're American, you know? Or maybe that was just Orange County, but there is just something, like there was always a mismatch between myself and the English language, made all the more ironic by the fact that the English language is how I make my living. So yeah, and that the way that lives in the play, language and as identity, is like very personal.
Yeah.
Very, very personal to me.
Yeah, a lot of that is in the characters, in the stories.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of like children of immigrants feel caught between cultures and caught between languages, and it can create, you know, like a real identity problem if you don't, I think, arrive to the third thing, which is that you're not Iranian, you're not American, you're not even something in between, just something new.
Finally, what is your favorite thing about this beautiful play?
Gosh, that's a big question. I mean, having journeyed with the play for so long, I've heard it more than any other play I've ever worked on, and
I've heard it more than I have.
But it's always revealing itself. I think, it's refusal to be pinned down or behave, and its insistence upon beauty, and it's the fact that it creates opportunity for such glorious, opaque, sophisticated performances is really what I think is why it's like so celebrated, is that it's, you know, it's full of meaning and message, and its language is so beautiful on the page, and that it's is a little beguiling reminds me of the classics that I fell in love with when I was first studying drama, because I think there's something a little fast fashion about the new playwriting industry. We're always looking for like a quick hit of meaning or style, and it's a bit disposable. But I found the plays that linger are ones that you can return to again and again, and it says something new every time.
That's beautiful.
It has a real confidence, and it really just kind of like sweeps over you, and it's beautiful. I love it so much. I can't wait to go see it again.
People are coming back. That's what it's. I was celebrating Pooya's birthday last night with the cast, and they told me like audience members are coming up. I'm like, this is my fourth time seeing it from different vantage points and hearing different things.
And Knud and I, when we first met, I said to him, and I have no eye for design, I said, please, I just want it to be beautiful. And Knud created something like a dream, but like more beautiful and elegant than a dream. This like feat of design, and that's really all I ever wanted. And I think about the production, and I just think about like, the costumes and the light, and that our beautiful set and our music. Like, I should not say this to the actors, but one of my favorite scenes is actually just a transition when no one's in the room, because it like the way the shadows are falling on the wall, the way you and Reza and Marsha and have created this thing that shouldn't be surprising, but what many find surprising is that a play that's set in the Middle East can be beautiful and romantic and soft and quiet. That is what I'm really proud of, and that's a testament to all of us, not just me.
Well said.